A soft breeze moved through the crowded street, carrying the sound of distant traffic, footsteps, and the metallic clink of coins dropping into cups as people passed by the usual line of street artists. But on this particular evening, the crowd felt different. There was an unusual silence weaving through the noise, as if everyone sensed that something rare was about to happen. At the far end of the boulevard, beneath a flickering street lamp, stood a young performer named Eli, his worn-out violin case open in front of him, holding barely a few crumpled dollar bills and coins. His clothes were old but clean, his shoes scratched and nearly broken, yet his posture, straight, still, almost defiant, made him look like someone who refused to give in to life's weight. For years, Eli had played on these streets, watching thousands of strangers walk past him. Some paused for a moment, some smiled, some simply hurried on, and others didn't notice him at all. But day after day, night after night, he stood in that same spot, determined to play the music that kept his heart alive. Music was his only language, the only thing he had left that still made him feel like he existed. He played not for fame, but for survival, for a reason to keep breathing. Ever since he was a child, his mother had told him, "If you ever feel lost, play your music, and the world will find you." But she had passed away when he was just 12, leaving him alone with a violin and a dream he didn't know how to chase. Years later, at 22, he was still chasing it, lonely, tired, hungry, but full of a passion that even hardship hadn't managed to break. On this evening, the sunset painted the sky gold and purple, and the street was crowded with families, tourists, and workers returning home. Eli lifted the violin to his shoulder and closed his eyes, letting the familiar weight ground him. He drew in a deep breath, and as the bow met the strings, a trembling note floated into the air. It was soft, almost fragile, but it carried something deeper: pain, memory, longing, and hope all woven into sound. People passing by slowed down. A mother pulling her son's hand stopped walking. A cyclist stepped off her bike. A group of teenagers lowered their phones. And gradually, without noise or direction, a small crowd formed around him. Eli didn't open his eyes. He didn't need to. He felt the presence of the world shifting around him the way only a musician can. The sound echoed off the buildings, filling the street like a warm glow. Children sat on the pavement, adults stood with hands in pockets, and someone quietly recorded him, though Eli had no idea. To him, it wasn't a performance, it was a conversation with the universe. Every note he played carried a piece of his story. Every rise and fall of the melody was a confession. And though he didn't know it, the world was listening. When he finished, the crowd clapped softly at first, then louder as more people joined in. Eli gave a shy nod and lowered his violin, and the crowd eventually dispersed. A few people tossed money into his case. A little girl handed him a flower. And then, life returned to normal. The noise of the street rose again. Eli packed up his violin, held the single flower in his hand for a long moment, then walked toward the train station with the few dollars he earned, barely enough for a meal. But far away, in a different corner of the city, something unbelievable was beginning to unfold. The video someone had recorded of Eli was being uploaded, posted with the simple caption, "You have to hear this street performer." Within hours, it spread. Within a day, it exploded. Millions watched the young man under the street lamp pouring his soul into a violin that looked like it had survived more storms than he had. People cried in their bedrooms, shared it with coworkers, sent it to friends, and posted it across social media. Comments flooded in. "Who is he? Where is he? He needs to be on America's Got Talent. Someone find this guy. This is the purest thing I've ever heard. His music healed something in me." The video reached producers at one of the world's biggest talent shows. Calls were made, searches were organized, and within a week, a producer tracked him down right back on the same street, playing under the same flickering street lamp. "Are you Eli?" the producer asked. Eli hesitated, unsure whether he was in trouble or about to be offered something impossible. "Yes," he finally said. The producer smiled, stretching out a hand. "How would you like to audition for America's Got Talent?" Eli froze, the world spinning. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He had dreamed of performing on a stage like that for years, but he never believed he would ever stand in front of judges, spotlights, or an audience that size. Yet here was an opportunity, standing in front of him, waiting. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say yes," the producer replied. And so he did. Weeks later, the day arrived. The theater was massive, the air buzzing with energy, the hallways full of performers rehearsing, pacing, stretching, or whispering prayers. Eli clutched his violin case to his chest as though it were the only anchor keeping him from floating away. His heart hammered with a mix of fear and disbelief. He had never performed for more than a small group of strangers. Now millions would watch. Judges whose opinions shaped careers would judge him. And that thought alone made his hands tremble. When his name was called, he walked onto the stage, and the bright lights nearly blinded him. The audience was a sea of faces. The judges sat in front like four mysteries he didn't know how to interpret. One of them leaned forward and smiled. "What's your name, Eli?" he answered softly. "What will you be doing for us today?" "I'm going to play the violin." "And where are you from?" "Just the city. I play on the streets." The audience murmured. Some judges raised their brows. One asked, "What made you want to audition?" Eli swallowed hard. "Because someone filmed me without me knowing. And it changed everything. I'm just grateful to be here." The crowd softened instantly. There was something honest in the way he spoke, something pure and raw. He wasn't there to brag or show off. He was there because fate pushed him onto a stage he had never dared dream of reaching. "Take your time," a judge said gently. Eli nodded and lifted his violin. Taking a deep breath, he placed the bow on the strings, and then silence, a heartbeat, a moment suspended in air. Then the first note sang into the theater. It was the same melody he had played under the street lamp, but amplified by courage, fear, hope, and the weight of a lifetime of struggle. The notes rose slowly, trembling like a small flame in wind. Then they grew stronger, soaring across the stage, wrapping around every seat, every judge, every heart in the room. People leaned forward unconsciously. A woman in the audience covered her mouth. A man wiped his eyes. The judges exchanged glances, stunned by the purity of what they were hearing. Eli played as if this were the last moment he would ever be allowed to speak. His song carried pain, his childhood struggles, the nights he spent hungry, the loneliness that followed him like a shadow, the heartbreak of losing his mother. But it also carried beauty, her memory, her love for him, her belief that music could save him. And as the melody climbed higher, the room felt as if it were breathing with him. Suddenly, the song shifted, growing bold, powerful, triumphant. It was as if Eli's violin declared to the world, "I survived. I am still here, and I will not be forgotten." The audience rose to their feet, one by one, then all at once. A wave of applause exploded long before he finished. People shouted. Some cried openly. The entire theater felt electrified, overwhelmed, transformed. But Eli kept playing, lost in the music, unaware of the storm of admiration surrounding him. When the final note faded, the entire auditorium erupted into a roar unlike anything he had ever heard. The judges stood. Every single person in the crowd stood. It was a standing ovation of pure love, pure astonishment, pure respect. Eli lowered his violin, breathless, trembling. Tears filled his eyes. He had never seen so many people stand for him. He had never heard that kind of applause. For a long moment, he simply stared at the audience, unable to believe they were cheering for him. One of the judges leaned forward, eyes glistening. "That was one of the most beautiful performances we have ever had on this stage. You didn't just play the violin. You told us your soul story." Another judge shook their head in disbelief. "I don't know who recorded you on the street, but thank God they did. The world needed to hear this." The third judge's voice trembled with emotion. "There's something magical about you. You don't play music, you become music." Then the final judge smiled, reached toward the center of the panel, and said the words everyone dreamed of hearing. "I think this deserves a golden buzzer." The crowd exploded. Eli gasped as the judge slammed their hand onto the button. Golden confetti burst from the ceiling like glowing rain, shimmering under the lights. Eli stood frozen as the confetti drifted around him, covering his shoulders, his violin, his hair. He looked up at the golden storm falling from above, and tears flowed freely down his face. He had dreamed of something like this, but never believed it could happen. He wasn't a trained performer. He wasn't famous. He didn't have a teacher, mentor, or studio. He had the street, the violin, and the memory of a mother who told him to play his heart into the world. As the confetti continued falling, the judge walked onto the stage and hugged him tightly. The music that had played in the background faded, but the moment stayed alive in every heart watching. People at home watching the broadcast cried. Clips went viral. Millions shared the performance. The young man under the street lamp had become a sensation overnight. Backstage, producers handed him tissues, hugged him, praised him, but Eli barely heard any of it. He knew what this moment meant. It meant every cold night on the streets had led to this stage. Every time he felt invisible, every humiliating moment, every failure, all of it was part of the path that brought him here. He sat alone for a moment, still shaking from the adrenaline, when he felt someone beside him. It was the man who had recorded him weeks ago. Eli stared, stunned. "You're the one," he whispered. The man smiled. "I just pressed record. You're the one who did everything else." Eli hugged him, overwhelmed by gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved my life." But the man shook his head. "No, you saved mine. Your music, it helped me at a time I needed it. I just wanted the world to hear it too." The two sat together in silence, both understanding that life had a strange way of weaving people's paths together. In the weeks that followed, Eli's life transformed completely. Music companies reached out, schools offered scholarships, fans sent messages from around the world, thousands of them. Some said his performance made them cry. Some said it helped them through depression. Others said it inspired them to chase their own dreams. For the first time in his life, Eli felt seen, heard, valued. He moved into a small apartment, the first home he had lived in since childhood. He bought new shoes. He bought groceries without worrying about the price. But he still visited the street where he used to play, standing under the familiar flickering street lamp. He didn't play for money anymore. He played because it was the place where his story began. And whenever he drew his bow across the strings, people gathered, not because he looked like a street performer, but because they recognized him from the show. Children pointed, adults smiled warmly, some cried, remembering his audition. And Eli would nod gently, humbled every single time. During the live shows, he performed again, stronger, more confident, more radiant than ever. His music echoed through the theater, commanding silence and awe. Each performance was better than the last, each one carrying new layers of emotion and artistry. The judges praised him endlessly. Audiences voted in overwhelming numbers. Social media lit up with messages of support. And as the competition continued, Eli's name rose higher and higher on every trending chart, every prediction list, every conversation. But fame didn't change him. He still warmed his hands before every performance the way he used to in winter. He still whispered a silent message to his mother before playing. He still practiced late at night, pouring everything he had into each note. On the night of the finale, the world watched as Eli walked onto the massive stage. The lights dimmed, the crowd hushed, his violin gleamed under the spotlight, and with a single deep breath, he began. His final performance was unlike anything he had ever played. It was a journey, his journey, woven into sound. It carried sorrow, struggle, love, pain, victory, and the beauty of rising again. When he finished, the entire arena stood, applauding for nearly 2 minutes straight. Judges were speechless. Fans sobbed. The world felt connected through the music of a boy who once played alone on the street. When the winner was announced, hearts pounded. The host looked at the finalists, then at the audience, then spoke the name everyone hoped to hear. Eli. The crowd erupted. Eli froze, trembling as confetti rained again, this time silver. He covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed beyond words. Judges rushed forward to hug him. The audience screamed his name. The world celebrated the street performer who had become a symbol of hope. As cameras flashed and music played and the host lifted his hand in victory, Eli whispered into the lights above, "I did it, Mom." He walked off the stage that night not just as a winner, but as someone whose music healed millions. Someone who proved that greatness doesn't come from where you start, it comes from the fire in your heart. And forever, people remembered the night when a street performer walked onto the America's Got Talent stage and brought the entire audience to their feet.